Hello grade 9s and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. If you are new, please click the subscribe button, become one of my YouTube students. In today's video, we are going to be looking at grade 9 financial maths exam questions. So this covers everything that you have covered or hopefully have covered in financial maths. I know a lot of my learners struggle with this, so if any of you that I actually teach in person are watching this video, hello, welcome. And to all my new students, hello and welcome. Let's jump right in. Our first question is an exchange rate question. So we say we've got the current exchange rate for the Polish currency to the South African rand is 1 to 4.47. Then they want us to convert 18,356.26 rand to the Polish currency. Show all your calculations. So now how I do currencies is as follows, or exchange rates. You write your two currencies. So we've got the Polish currency to the South African rand, and they tell me this is the exchange rate. The exchange rate is given to me. Because they mention the Polish currency first, it means that the 1, the first number in the ratio, belongs to the Polish currency. So under P, write 1, and under R, write 4.47. Then they want me to convert this amount of money, which is in rands, to the Polish currency. So what I do is I write my exchange rate, which I've done like that. Then I'm given an amount in rands. So I write that amount under R because they gave it to me in rands. I must write it under R. 18,356.26. And I put a question mark over here because I want to know how much of the Polish currency that is equal to. Now, how I will always do ratios, always and forever, is I start with the number that I have. I divide on the side. So I go like this. This is the side. I divide on the side. So I say 18,356.26 divided by 4.47. And then I times on the top. So essentially my sum, my working out, is 18,356.26 divided by 4.47, divide on the side, times on the top, times 1. I put that in my calculator to get the answer. And I get the following answer, 4106.5. Now this is what my calculator tells me, 5458 ... We need to round off to 2 decimal places unless they state otherwise. So you chop the number off there. Because this is 5 or more, we raise the score. So we make this number bigger. So 5.55. That's the rounding rule that I use with my grade 8s and my grade 9s. So we rounding off to 2 decimal places. So after the second decimal place, here's the comma. This is decimal place number 1. Here's decimal place number 2. You cut it off. If this number is 5 or more, we raise the score, which means we make its neighbor 1 bigger. So 5. That's your answer. So remember the rule. We divide on the side times on the top for ratios. Now my second question, this one over here, is what we call a hire purchase question. Now, a hire purchase agreement uses simple interest. And a hire purchase agreement is something that happens when we buy an item and we don't have the entire amount on hand at that moment. So for example, you go to the shop and you want to buy a TV, but you don't have 20,000 rand or 10,000 rand or 5,000 rand or however much a TV costs, or you want to buy a fridge and you don't have the entire amount at the moment. So what you do is you pay a deposit. So you pay a certain percentage, maybe a 10% deposit or a 15% deposit or 20% deposit. So you pay a certain amount, a certain part of the total on the day, and the balance, which is the leftover amount, you pay back over time, but with interest. And just remember that hire purchase always uses simple interest, which means we're going to make use of this formula. To get the P value, which is my principal amount, which is my starting amount in the formula, to get P when we're doing hire purchase, we first need to subtract the deposit minus the deposit from the cash price. So let's try the exam question and hopefully it will refresh your memory. So we've got furniture worth 33,100 rand. 33,100 that is being bought. A deposit of 10 is being paid. So that means that you go to the shop, you want to buy furniture, but on the day before you can take the furniture home, you need to pay 10% of 33,100 in order to take the furniture home. And then we take out a hire purchase loan to pay off the balance. And it says, how long are we taking to pay off the balance? 36 months. So 36 months. How many years is 36 months? That is 3 years. How do I know that? Because 36 divided by 12. There's 12 months in a year. And this is the simple interest rate. That is I. So in my formula, I is 11% or 11. N number of years is 3. I still need to work out what P is. So how much will I have to pay in total? So this is quite an interesting question because first of all, you have to pay the deposit. So the deposit is 10% of 33,100. So 10% of 33,100. When we're doing a percentage, a 10%, it's dividing by 100. So 10 divided by 100 of, an of sum is a multiplication sum, 33,100. That deposit amount is 3310. So this is the deposit. This is what we pay on the day. Okay. Then the balance. So the balance means what is left over. That has to be paid back over time. So we take 33,100 minus my deposit, 3310. That gives me 29790. That's the amount of money that has to be paid over the period of 36 months. However, that's going to get paid back at an interest rate with interest. So what we're going to have to do, what that number gives me over here, after we minus the deposit, that now becomes our P value in the formula. So you take your cost price or your total selling price, so your total selling price of the furniture minus the deposits, and that gives me my P value. Now we need to put that in my formula. A equals P, 1 plus I times N, that's I times N over 100. P is now 29790. 1, that is the number 1, okay? 1 plus I is 11 times 3 over 100. Please, that's not 11.3, that's 11 times 3. So we put that in the calculator and we get 39620.7. Okay, so let's just clarify what's going on here. On the day of purchase, when we walked into the shop and we wanted to buy the furniture, we had to pay a 10% deposit. So that amount was 3,310 Rand. That's the money we gave to the shop before we could take our furniture home with us. Then we took the original amount minus what we already paid, and we got what we call the balance. The balance is also called P. The balance is also called P. That is the starting amount that we now owe for the period of 36 months. So in the place of P, you put that number, 29790. You put the rest of the information in your formula. And after 3 years, after 36 months, in total, we would have had to have paid back 39620.7. So in total, how much did you pay for the furniture? Well, remember you paid that deposit in the beginning. That was 3310 in the beginning. That's that amount over there. And then as the 3 years was going on, 36 months, we had to pay back this amount, which includes interest, which is 39620.7. So in total, for this furniture, we paid 42930.7. And look at how much more expensive it is than if I just had the cash in the beginning, the full cash in the beginning. I end up paying 42,930.7 Rand. In the beginning, it was just 33,100 Rand. So just to show you how you get marked for a question like this, You first have to work out the deposits over there, which I did in my question as well. Then you work out the balance, which we called P. Remember, that's the leftover amount. So you get 1 mark for working out P. Then you get your formula mark. Now, this formula that they use over here is slightly different from the version that I used. Basically, all that I did, their formula looks like this, my formula looks like this. It's the same thing, 1 plus I n over 100. I'm just reminding you that the I needs to be divided by 100. Remember, I was 11%, but that has to be divided by 100, which is where they get the 0.11 from. Okay, just keep in mind that you must divide it by 100. It's 11%. Then you put it into the formula, you get a mark for substituting into the formula, and then you get 1 mark for your final answer. This question they only gave worth 3 marks in this test. I think it's worth quite a bit more than 3 marks, but anyway, that's how they get their marks for this test. The next question says, how much interest will be paid? Now remember, after we took away the deposit, we were left with 29790 Rand that had to be paid back. So after we removed the deposit, this was the balance. That was my starting amount. That's why we call it P. When I put that into the formula and I worked out if I had to add interest onto that amount, so if I have to include interest, I got the final amount, which is called A. As a recap, P is the starting amount. It's your balance. It's what you start with before you add the interest. And A is your final amount. It's what was accumulated after we added the interest. In this question, my after amount was that amount, 39620.7. That's my final amount. So if I started with this amount and I ended with this amount, why is there a difference between those two amounts? How did the amounts get bigger? What caused the amounts to increase? How did it go from being 29,790 to 39,000 and whatever? It increased because of interest. And that is what this question wants to know. How much interest? So how do we work out how much interest? Well, we take the ending amount, A, and we minus P. So take 39620.7 and we minus 29790 and we get 9,830.7. That is the amount of interest that was paid. My next question says I deposit 2,500 into a savings account which earns compound interest, not simple interest. Remember, simple interest is a separate thing. Hire purchase works off of simple interest, compound interest, different thing. So this question is about compound interest. They give me the interest rate, which is 7.5% per annum. Per annum means per year. Determine how much money will be in your savings account after 5 years. Okay, so what did I start with? My P is what I started with, 2,500. My interest rate is 7.5%. My N, my number of years, is 5. But because we're doing compound interest, we will not be using this formula, the one that I showed you earlier. We will not be using that one. That is for simple interest. We will be using this formula. So remember the difference. The compound interest formula, the N is the exponent and it's outside the bracket. Little baby N. Okay, so we start with 2,500. That's a 1. Plus my interest rate is 7.5. We divided by 100 because it's an interest rate. It's a percentage. It's a interest percentage. And N is 5 to the power of 5. So you need to type that in as is on your calculator. And that is the answer that I get. There we go. Compound interest, quite straightforward. Let's do another question. And I want you to try and pause. See if you can do the question yourself. And then unpause and mark it with me. Okay, cool. Let's mark. We've got Megan wants to buy a radio, but she can't afford the whole amount of 999 Rand at once. So remember what I told you. They don't say the word here, but she is basically taking out a higher purchase agreement. Okay, they even mention simple interest. So she first pays a deposit. So a deposit is the amount that she immediately has to pay over, and the rest, the balance, the leftover, must be paid over 3 years at 25% simple interest per year. And she makes 36 equal monthly payments. So 2.1, on what amount will she pay the 25% interest? Now remember what we discussed. She first has to pay a deposit. The deposit is the amount of money you give on the day. The 200 Rand you give on the day. You don't pay interest on the deposit. You pay interest on the balance, on the leftover amount. So if the total cost is 999 Rand and she pays a deposit of 200 Rand, what is left over? 799 Rand. That amount is what we call the balance. That is my p-value, which I'm going to be using in a little bit. And that is the amount on which she pays interest. So basically 799 Rand. Then calculate the total amount that she must repay. So when they say the total amount that she must repay, they mean including interest. So what we have so far after we took off the deposit is that my starting amount now is 799 Rand. My interest rate, my I, is 25%. My N is 3 years. They want to know what is the total amount, including interest basically, that she'll have to pay after the 3 years. So we should have used, or you should have used, this formula, 1 plus IN over 100. In the place of P, we put our starting amount, which is 799. Remember, it's not the original amount anymore because we've paid a deposit. Then we say 1 plus I is 25, multiplied by N, which is 3 years, divided by 100. If instead of 25 divided by 100, you can say 0.25 times 3. So this is just an alternative way of writing it, by the way, in case you didn't write it the way I did, but you'll end up getting the same answer. And we get 1,398.25 Rand. That is the total amount that she must now repay. That's excluding the 200. So that's besides the 200. Based off of the starting amount, 799 Rand, that amount grew because of the interest on it. And now she's going to have to pay back 1,398.25 Rand. So that is your final answer there. Now we've got the question, calculate her monthly repayments. We didn't have this question earlier in the first example we did, but hopefully you can figure out how to get this answer. Monthly repayments means how much she's going to pay every month. And they tell me that we're doing 36 equal monthly repayments. They didn't even need to tell me 36 because I know that it's 3 years and I know that every year has 12 months. So 3 years times 12 is 36 months, okay? But how much is she going to pay in each of those 36 months? Well, you need to take the total amount that she's going to pay, which is your answer from 2.2, and divide it by 36. So basically, this is the way that I taught it to my class. Your monthly repayments is equal to your A value. So let me just write it like this, is equal to your A value, which is your final value, including interest, divided by your number of months. Number of months. So in our case, our A value, our final value is this amount here, 1398.25, 1398.25 divided by 36, and we get 38.84 Rand. That's the amount that she's going to pay back every month for 3 years. Our last question over here says, how much does she pay in total for the radio? Now, they mean in as a whole, from the day she walked into the shop. So imagine it in your head, on the day she's walking into the shop, remember she paid the deposit. Okay, how much was the deposit? It was 200 Rand. So that's money she paid for the radio. Plus, she paid the total amount including interest, which we calculated in 2.2. That's the A value, the final value, including interest, which was, we just did it earlier, 1398.25. 1398.25. 1598.25. Adding those together, 1598.25. That's the amount that she ended up paying in total for the radio, when originally it only cost 999 Rand. But because she didn't have all that money on her at once, she had to pay a little bit, the 200 Rand, and then the rest with interest. I hope that going through this past paper was useful. Please subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you very soon. Bye, everyone.